Hi, everyone, and welcome to 15 Minutes. We appreciate you joining us. Historically, King County is contracted out with 4 independent public service agencies to provide legal representation to those accused of crimes. Until recently, however, through voter fiat, those 4 agencies have now been combined to one public defense service agency. The newly hired head of that agency is my guest today, Miss Lorinda Youngcourt. Lorinda, thank you for being with us today.
It's my pleasure.
Welcome to Seattle. You are from Indiana, and I've heard that you lived with your husband on a 100-acre farm in Indiana. Is that really true?
It is true. We lived in southern Indiana, outside of a little town called Huron, population 300, in far southwest Lawrence County. We raised horses, not any crops. And of our 100 acres, probably half of it was forest, half of it was pasture land. And we backed up to the Hoosier National Forest so I could ride for hours and hours and not see another person.
Now, you probably had a crew of about 25 or so helping you maintain that 100 acres?
Absolutely not. So
Okay.
my husband's a retired Marion County Sheriff's deputy, retired as a detective sergeant. And so he did most of the work while I was at work. And then I would do the horse training. I would birth the babies in the middle of the night, things like that. But nope, no hands.
Okay. You had a very esteemed career as a public defender in Indiana. You've just been confirmed by the King County Council, so by the way, congratulations on that. Tell me a little bit about your career in the Public Defense Agency in Indiana.
Yes. So I started out with our state public defender's office in Indiana, which doesn't do trial work, but does post-conviction work. I worked there for about 4 years, left to go into private practice so I could learn how to do trial work. Worked with the Indianapolis Public Defender's Office, Marion County, quite a large office, not near as big as ours here, but a big office. And then when I married my husband, we moved to southern Indiana. By that time, I had developed enough of a reputation that I was teaching trial skills not only locally in Indiana, but nationally at the National Criminal Defense College in Macon, Georgia. So even when I was in private practice and doing the trial work, it was always as either a assigned counsel for a larger public defender's office or on contract, things like that.
What are some of the issues that you routinely faced running a public defense agency in Indiana?
But I think the biggest issue for public defenders is workload. There's a lot of talk about...
In terms of too much, I would imagine, not too little.
In terms of too much. So the system was originally designed in the last 20 to 30 years to talk about numbers of cases. Well, that doesn't always tell us how much time it takes to do the best work possible on those particular cases.
Right.
So the workload, I can train good lawyers, I can train you to be an excellent lawyer, I can get you a good computer and good resources, but unless you actually have the time to devote to the cases, it's going to be a constant problem for you. So workload is the biggest one.
And is that a result of just too little funding from the state?
Generally too little funding, primarily, actually, too little funding.
Seems like it always comes down to that. What attracted you to moving from your 100-acre farm to Seattle, a place that I think you'd only been a couple of times visiting, to take over this brand new agency? What attracted you to take this position?
Well, I think 2 things. The first was the challenge of taking something that was about to be reconstructed, if you will, and to be able to be involved in that and bring to it all the values that I hold dear in public defense. And another one was for me personally. I've been practicing law for 26 years, always criminal work, and I felt like it was time for me to give it away. Everything that I've learned, I need to give it away, share it with other lawyers. And this was an opportunity to do it on a very large and grand scale.
What are some of the values that you hold dear to providing public defense services?
The number one value is it's about the clients. It's not about what's convenient for the lawyer. It's not about what's convenient for the judge. It's about the clients.
Sure.
And everything that we do needs to be done with an eye towards, is this what the client wants, needs, is going to help them get on with their lives. Other things, training. I don't think that any lawyer, particularly public defenders, there should never be a time in our career where we say, oh, we've learned everything that we need to know, and so we can just smooth sail on through from here on out. We need to be learning something new every day. Our cases are so varied, and as science changes and forensic evidence changes, we're forced to learn those things. And so training is just huge.
The agency that has been created by these 4 independent agencies, I think has approximately 400 employees.
Yes.
Over 200 of those are attorneys.
Yes.
Has there been some resistance by some of these folks at first when these agencies have been combined? Because it is change. It's change on a grand scale. Have you run into some of that resistance, I would imagine?
I don't know that I have personally. I know the history. I know that the change was brought about by a lawsuit that not all of the public defenders agreed to. They had 4, in essence, separate public defenders' offices. They had 4 separate cultures. Each of those offices had particular things that they excelled in and were very proud of doing. When we brought them together, that's very threatening. That's a huge, huge change. I think because we're public defenders and we're always thinking about our clients, primarily that was about, is it going to negatively impact our clients? But also when you're asking people and saying, okay, now you're one agency, we don't always have to have 4 of everything, that starts dealing with people's personal lives, their livelihood. So it makes perfect sense to me that it has been almost sort of a traumatic time for us as an organization to come together and grow into one county department. That being said, because there are public defenders, I know that we're all going to be okay. Because for us, it's all about the clients.
What makes a good public defender? You can say what makes a good criminal defense attorney, but what makes a good public defender?
A good public defender. My theory is that there's 3 kinds of people that are drawn to public defense. One is the warrior. I will fight, and I'm going to stand between my client and that judge, and if they want him, they got to come through me. The other is the caretaker, the person who says, oh, you need help, let me help you. And the third are those folks that have a vision of what the world could be if we did things better. And so they are idealists, if you will. Those 3 things are generally what I see. But interestingly, those 3 things are things that sometimes make us not the best employees. And I don't mean that I'm not degrading my attorneys at all, but what I'm saying is it's a very interesting dichotomy, because if I want somebody who's going to fight the system, well, guess what? When we have an organized county office, some of the management is the system, right?
You mentioned one of the challenges is the caseload, and that's usually what you hear in any public defense agency. As a practicing attorney, I've seen these public defenders in court, and they have tremendous amounts of caseloads. That's got to be one of your biggest challenges.
One of our biggest. Fortunately, Washington State has caseload standards. And King County specifically has worked on systems such as interim case waiting, which makes it easier for our lawyers to have reasonable caseloads. That being said, when they were 4 not-for-profit agencies, they were fighting for every dime that they could get. And so the caseloads, I believe, were somewhat higher when they were the 4 not-for-profits than they will be when we completely get our reorganization done.
I would imagine there's a lot of challenges that you're facing as you are taking these 4 agencies that have been brought together, implementing new standards, implementing a new organizational structure on who reports to who, as you had mentioned. Again, what are some of the goals that you are bringing to this agency that you want to achieve in your first year as head of this agency?
I think that's easy. The first thing I want to do is take those things that the 4 not-for-profit agencies were doing very well, and I want to share that. So I want every lawyer in our department to be able to do as well as any single lawyer was doing in any single division. So I want to bring uniformity of the high quality of standard. The second thing I want us to do is to be as efficient as we can be. In order for us to request our funding people, the county council and Dow Constantine, to help us with budgetary things, we need to show them that we are handling that money in a way that the citizens of King County are getting the most they can for their tax dollars. They're getting high quality and they're getting transparency. They know where the money is going and what we're doing with it. So those are the two biggest goals right now.
Are you finding out that people coming out of law school don't have as much interest as maybe they did before in working in the public defense field, or do you not think it's changed at all?
I think it's the complete opposite.
Is that right?
In my 26 years, I have seen, in Indiana, I ran a big internship program from the Indiana University Law School in Bloomington, Indiana. And I was amazed by the number of young lawyers or young law students that would come and say, I have always wanted to be a public defender.
Is that right?
I have always wanted to help somebody. That was not in the lexicon when I was in law school in the 1980s. So I think it's improved. I think that our young lawyers today, our young law students, actually have a little bit more social conscience than I know my age bracket of young lawyers did.
As I mentioned, you were just confirmed by the King County Council. What are some of the concerns that maybe they had for you, or some of the goals that they wanted you to meet as the new head of this agency?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. I know Councilman Gossett is very, very concerned, as we all are, but very concerned with the racial disproportionality in the juvenile justice system. So he had asked me lots of questions about what is it that public defense can do to help us solve this problem that we're still grappling to get our minds around. Others on the council were concerned and wanted me to guarantee to them that I would be independent, that although I am appointed by the county executive, I am willing to, when I'm speaking out on behalf of our clients, that I'm willing to diverge from maybe what the county executive has to say. So those were two things, and they want me to bring efficiencies. They want to know that we're not spending a lot of money in, I guess, managing services rather than delivering services.
Let me ask you about your time in Seattle. As you had mentioned, you visited here a couple of times. What do you think of our city so far?
Oh, well, I love the city.
Grew up in a 100-acre farm.
Actually, I didn't. I grew up in Indianapolis.
Oh, sorry.
And so I'd spent 15 years living this rural life, which I absolutely loved. But it's, in many ways, kind of really nice to be back in the city. Yeah. It's nice to be someplace where you can go to a restaurant, a different kind of restaurant every night of the week if you want. The thing, though, that strikes me most about my move here is I was just at a meeting for a program called Familiar Faces. And it's a program that's trying to figure out for our county as a whole, how do we take these people that have familiar faces, because we see them in the jail and in the healthcare system and the social services system so frequently, and how do we improve that? And I was sitting next to the director of the Department for Adult and Juvenile Detention Services, and across from somebody from the Seattle Police Department, and we were on the same page. That is amazing.
Is that a surprise to you?
It is a surprise. It's not something that I'm very used to.
Sure.
It is so wonderful to be in a community where everybody is progressively thinking, how can we help people, rather than how do I push those people away from me, get them out of my system.
The reaction you've been receiving, it sounds pretty favorable so far.
Yes.
One of the issues, of course, is the recidivism rate. Once you're in jail and you're released,
right,
sometimes bad things tend to happen again. Is that something, again, that you're getting a positive feedback from others about, is how to deal with that recidivism rate?
Yes, because that's exactly what Familiar Faces is talking about. I also think that there's a fair amount of research and more ongoing through grants right now in public defense to see what is our role as public defenders in that recidivism rate. Are there things we can do when we're defending our clients or counseling our clients through the criminal justice system that can have a positive impact on recidivism? So it's a very important issue, and it's something that should be driving criminal justice always. I mean, we've been for years now doing the same things over and over
Right.
and over again. And guess what? Our prison and jail population is just rising and
going up.
rising. So we're not doing it right. So we have to be able to go back and look and see how can we do better.
Lorinda Youngcourt, thank you very much for being our guest today.
Well, thank you for
Pleasure
having me.
talking to you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Join us again for another 15 minutes. We'll see you soon.